So if you've thought about your book cover, now you're probably ready to start looking for pictures. Oftentimes you won't really know what's going to be on your book cover until you see what's available. You might have some ideas for seeing, but you won't really know until you find the pictures that you want to use and then start putting them together and see what really works. You want to basically just research a bunch of different sites and find different things you might be able to use. I always just keep a folder and I just drag pictures into it, good pictures that I find. Once you have 10 or 20 pictures, you can start playing around and putting them together and see what really works. Sometimes you can get away with just using one amazing picture. It's usually better to use one amazing picture than 5 mediocre pictures and you try to blend them together into something unique. Dramatic is almost always better. However, you don't want to use something that's so perfect and dramatic that everybody else is going to use it exactly as it is, because then you're going to find an exact duplicate of your cover on somebody else's book. I'm just going to show you some of the places that I find photography. This is 123rf.com. This is the one that I have my main account with, so I can download 10 images a day and I just pay a monthly fee. Usually you just want to find the images first and then download samples, and then once you're committed to a cover design you can go back and buy those photos and it'll save you money. For me, because I design so many covers, I need to have access to a lot more photos. And so we might look for something in here like Western, if we were writing a cowboy, and you'd see what comes up. And there's not much, but you might get something like that. And if that's not what I'm looking for, I might go for sexy cowboy. There's a lot of different sites, so you're going to have to do these same searches on every site. Some of them will have the same material, but a lot of them will have different things. And if you're really looking for that one perfect picture, then you'll have to look around. You could get away with something like this that's a silhouette. I don't really like silhouettes. I don't find that they work very well on the covers, especially if you're just, because it's mostly about the light. Like unless you have just the right light behind it, the silhouette's just going to look fake. So I try to avoid silhouettes on covers. Anything with a good expression, anything with the model that's looking right at you is usually more powerful. Some of them are kind of cheesy. Anyway, but this is one site, 123rf.com. Another one I use is Big Stock Photo. And maybe we need something like a mountain cabin, or a cabin in the woods, or a spooky forest or something. There's a lot of book covers with spooky forests, so I still make them. Spooky forests work really well for book covers, but they're also kind of overused. This is a really nice picture. If I was doing like a thriller or mystery set in the woods, I could take something like this and then I could make it more dramatic by adding effects to make it more kind of this style. If you find something styled like this, that kind of vintage old effect, you can do that pretty easily to any photo. So don't just grab a photo because it looks cool or dramatic, because you can do that with any photo. And we'll show you how to do it later. I would love to live in this little cabin right here in the woods. Anyway, there's a lot of options on here. Some of these are pretty good. You would just start dragging these into a folder. So I would have a folder on my desktop for book cover design. And then if I found something that I liked, I would just drag it over. The nice thing about it, usually, and you got to be kind of careful with this, when you drag and drop a picture like this, it's going to keep, if you get it from a, oops, what happened? If you get it from one of these big stock photo sites, it's going to have the number in the file name. Some of them have the number built into the picture, like Big Stock, but a lot of them don't. And they also have the logo. But they should have the number in the file name, and that's important because then you can, when you need that photo again, you can go back and search for it with the number and then find it again. I've made the mistake many times of downloading a picture and then not knowing where it came from, and I couldn't find the same picture again, so I couldn't use it in a book cover. So that's a big stock photo. There's a lot of stuff on here too. This is deposit photos, another one that I use. Let's look for vampires. There's a lot of vampire stuff, and I mean, some of it is pretty good, but the better it is, if you find something really great, you're gonna see it on other book covers, and it's almost always better. Like this one's really cheesy, stereotypical vampire. It's gonna be used on a lot of book covers, so I wouldn't use it on a book cover because it's too easy. This one, it's gonna make me click on it first, and then I can drag it over, and then it's got the number, so I can find it again. If I were making a vampire book cover, I'll usually find models that work, and then I'll add the effects to make them a little more vampire. I can add fangs or dramatic eyes, those glowing style eyes. This one's pretty cool. On the other hand, if you find something that really works and it's easy, I mean, I don't think you can really go wrong, even if it's cheesy, even if it's other people are going to use it, even if it's really easy and you just take it and add some text, it can still work better than a lot of other things. It can still work better than something you try to make on your own. So don't shy away from just grabbing a really nice picture and using it, because a really strong picture is better than something really weak but custom. And you may think it's better to do something original and to blend your own thing and make your own scene, but if it's not as powerful as a simple stock photography image, the stock photography image is still going to sell better and attract readers better. So it's better to do it, something unique if you can, but if you don't have the Photoshop skills or the design skills to blend images together well, you might be better just using a good stock photo. That's deposit photos. This is iStock. iStock's one of the more expensive ones. However, the quality of the pictures are usually better too. So I'll search for vampires again and see if we get any different kind of results. So they have some different ones. These aren't necessarily better, and some of them are even the same. Like this one was the same one, but it's probably cheaper on the other site. But you may find some on iStock that you won't find elsewhere that can be pretty good. And because it's more expensive, some indie authors are on a budget and they're not going to spend even 20 or 30 bucks on a photo. These ones, I mean, iStock can have a big range, but that one's 3 credits. I don't know how much credit costs on this site. Each site has a different kind of system for buying photos, but they're usually under 10 bucks. However, they can be over 100, and I just saw one photo that was that one's pretty neat. I just saw one photo that I was going to use for a client, and it was 200 just for the standard and about $1,000 for the expanded or the extended license. When you're buying stock photography, I'll probably make another video talking about the licensing. That'll be the next video, talking about the license and the extended versus standard and what you need. In this photo, I'm just showing you some of the sites that I use. A lot of times what you're going to want is a character, so you might want like a blonde teen girl. And often, I mean, sometimes you want the whole model standing up, sometimes a close-up of the face would work better. And usually you can just find a really good model and then just delete this background and put her somewhere else, change the background, and then you'll have a pretty good cover. Usually you can do a good model and put her in a background, and that's all you really have to do. You don't want to try cramming in too much because it can be dangerous. And you usually don't want to, I mean, if there's like a super glamorous girl, a lot of times there's kind of the professional models that just look like high fashion magazines. That's usually a mistake to use one of those because they're so recognizable and so obvious. But some of these, I mean, they're pretty good, and you can just crop out the background and change the location and put your model somewhere else. Or if you have to do something like change the color of her eyes or hair, that's pretty easy. Sometimes you want a model from the back. I'll go over to another site. So this is iStock. This is PhotoDune. PhotoDune is part of a series they have. Envato has Theme Forest for WordPress themes, and they have code and video. They have all these different things, but the photo is not bad, and you'll find some different things. Sometimes you want a model from the back. So like, if you don't want to show her face, and sometimes it's a good idea just to show the back of her head. Because then nobody will recognize, like the face doesn't stand out so much. I'm going to search for a girl standing in forest. The quality of these aren't quite as good, but on the other hand, sometimes you get something unique that other people haven't found yet. Changing clothes is difficult, especially if you need period clothing. If you need someone who's medieval, for example, or ancient. I'm doing a book cover now that's Sumerian and biblical, so she has to look like she's wearing the right clothes for the timepiece. That's a weird picture. And you're gonna have to, like, if you got a model and you wanted to change the clothes, you'd have to find another model with the same pose or posture who's wearing the clothes that you want to be able to change them out. And it's not very easy. If you don't find any stock photography that you want to use, you can try Flickr. Flickr's Creative Commons. Creative Commons means they've let you, they have different versions, but what you want is this one, the attribution license, which means you can use the photo if you attribute the photographer, and there's 52 million photos. So as long as I'm in this category, if I find something that works, sometimes it's good for vintage stuff, because you might find some historical pictures. So here's some vintage war pictures if you were doing a World War II novel or something. And so something like this could work really well for a book cover, but you'd have to get the permission. So you'd click on it and see who it's by. You probably would want to contact them just to make sure, like this is his grandfather, so you wouldn't want to surprise them by having the picture on a book cover. But it's in this category, it's in the Creative Commons, so it's legal for you to use it if you just attribute to them. And sometimes they don't use their real name on Flickr either, so you just have to it says some rights reserved. So you click on that, and that'll tell you who put the photo up. Oops, no, it won't. So it's just this Tommy and Georgie, I think. Up here it says Thomas Frederick, so that's probably his name. But on Flickr, sometimes they don't even use their real name, and it's a little bit difficult to find their information so that you can correctly attribute them. When you attribute them, you can just, if you sign into Flickr, I think there's a way to send them a message or contact them to see if they want to use their name. Otherwise, you would just say, I got this photo from, Tommy and Georgie on Flickr's Creative Commons. Here's an album, 1920s to 1980s, with almost 500 pictures. So, you can find some pretty good stuff in here. You want to be aware that you're probably using someone's personal pictures, so it might seem a little weird, but they put it up in Flickr's Creative Commons, which means you can use it for commercial works if you attribute them. And usually when you do that, you can usually on the back of the book cover, you say cover design by name and then cover photo by, and you would have the Flickr profile name or their name. And then you'd also want to do that on the title page of the book. Not the title, the copyright page of the book. Another place, I'm going to do another video about getting art and illustration, but you can find some good pictures on DeviantArt. This is deviantart.com. DeviantArt's a good place where creative people put up content, and there's some really amazing art, and there's also some pretty amazing photography. But they're very careful about people using their content. So you've got to make sure to get permission and to usually offer to pay. Not always, like if you look in scraps, photo scraps, I think that's, so I'll look at photography, and then I'll look for, I think I'll do it this way actually. Scraps just means it's usually stuff that, like extra stuff that people can use. Anyway, there's a lot of pictures on here. Some of them are pretty great. Some of them are cosplay, abstract, surreal, humor. I can find it's usually really good for people in portraits because other people won't be using them because they're not stock photography. So if you find a model that really works on DeviantArt, you're not going to see the same model on stock photography sites, which is kind of nice because your cover will be unique. A lot of people like taking flattering pictures of themselves and putting them on DeviantArt. Flattering or unflattering pictures of themselves. But you can find some stuff that's unique. Fashion portraits, emotive portraits. And then using it, they won't all be okay with you using their picture. You'd have to email them and ask, like this one's pretty great. But these are often professional or amateur photographers, and a lot of them are living in other countries, Eastern Europe or South America. So if you offer them 100 US or something to use their photo, many of them will be appreciative. Some of them not. Some of them are already doing really well and making a good living online. But a lot of the designers and photographers, they're living in countries that are just, it's hard to make a living. And so for them, $100 for a photo that they've already taken that isn't earning them money, it's not a bad deal. I've also bought art from DeviantArt to use for book covers. It could cost a lot more than $100. It depends. If they're well known or if they're a professional photographer, they're going to charge a lot more. But since there's a lot of amateurs on this site, it's possible to find some pretty good stuff that is just overlooked and hasn't been used for book covers before. And so like here, it's a little tricky. When I copy these over to my desktop, from DeviantArt, you get something like this, and it's hard to find again, but it says this is the name of the file by, and then this is AV Roragum. So if I copied that, I could search for it in DeviantArt and find the same photographer again. But really, you want to make your own account so you can sign in and just favorite the things that you like. That'll make it a lot easier for you to find again later. There's a lot of good character stuff. I mean, like when you need a really good model, and you can get some really unique stuff that you won't find elsewhere. That would make a really good cover. And you can change like the background and stuff. You'd want to ask, you'd want to make sure you get in touch. They are protective of their content, so you want to make sure you've got the permission and probably pay them something to use their photos. It's a good source for art and illustration as well, also for finding artists and illustrators to do custom work. This one's pretty cool. I'd like to use that sometime. You can do a lot. I mean, a lot of people will argue about whether you want a stock photography model or not, or basically a face, because some people say they like the readers to imagine their own characters, and so if you put a character on the cover, it ruins the reader's imagination. That's sort of true. However, you need to work harder to sell the book, and having a beautiful or really emotional face on the book cover makes things a lot easier, and it'll probably resonate with readers especially better than just like a plain landscape, or better even than a figure from a distance. If you do put a close-up picture like this, it's a powerful photo. It's going to work pretty well for you to sell the book. So maybe you're ruining their, imaginational experience, the experience of reading the book, but they wouldn't necessarily start reading the book unless you can sell the book to them with a great cover. And so having a really strong face on the cover, it can be a way to do that often works better than a lot of other options. So yeah, definitely DeviantArt. I mean, stock photography is great too, but if you need people and you don't want to just use a stock photography model, you can find some really great stuff on here. But then you'd probably want to, you need to contact the photographer, and then you'd probably need to get the model's permission too. So you'd want to ask. This is a Warhammer from Russia. So they're Russian models. But the photographer needs to make sure to get permission from the model as well. You can also just find, let me go back to photography. I got kind of distracted with people. But you can find landscapes. You can also find some photo manipulation stuff that's finished and ready to go. So I'll go back to photography. And maybe I'll look for urban and rural. there's a lot of urban decay stuff because a lot of these photographers are in Eastern Europe where there's a lot of decrepit buildings. So if you're looking for that, rundown insane asylum or something, you may find it here, like that. City and skylines. These won't always be as powerful as some stock photography because they're probably not processed yet. But even if you get one that's still pretty natural, you can process it with filters or effects, textures. I'm going to try that again. Go back to photography. Horror and macabre. You'll find all sorts of weird stuff on here. But since most people don't use DeviantArt looking for book cover stuff, you may get lucky and get something really great that's not being used. Like this one would make a nice book cover. And this is something, you could put some text on this and it'd be ready to go. That one's really nice. It'd make a good book cover too. Often with characters, you don't really need a book cover that tells you much about the book or the details. If you can just get something that makes an immediate emotional impact, and you can usually do that with just a nice photo with a character. If you can do that, you don't need to put in all the details of the background information. A strong photo will work much better than something that's got all the right details and really matches your book. And it's okay if the cover doesn't match your book exactly. The cover is just packaging. It's got to sell the book. It's got to make people start reading the book. If it's not, exactly what you imagined your book to be all about, the important thing is that they buy it and they start reading it. Or even if you're giving it away for free, it's hard to make people start reading your book or care about it at all. And that's really what the cover is for, because the cover can make that connection to make them have the desire to read the book. And so a really strong photo can do most of the work for you. If you get a really strong photo and you don't mess it up with bad text layout, and we'll talk about, once we start designing covers, we'll talk about putting some text. As long as you don't screw up a really good photo, then you'll have a really strong start, more than most other people. Here's some water stuff. That's pretty neat. I would do a close-up right here. You usually don't want to center. I would almost, even if I just off-centered it here and cut off her head, that would still make a really interesting book cover. I think you can have something human with some body parts, even not showing the face, and that still can make a really emotional connection. Anyway, these are some of the places where I would look for stock photography. You don't always find exactly what you want. Sometimes you have to broaden out. Sometimes you'll see something that you weren't looking for, and that's really why you just want to spend a lot of time browsing. You may find something that's not really what you wanted or what you had in mind, but it's just a really strong photograph. If you can get something that, makes you stop and really hooks your attention, then save it. It's probably going to work pretty well for you. anything emotional too. I mean, if you get a model with an emotional expression on her face, that'll usually work, but it's also about colors and contrast. And so something like this with just really strong lighting and contrast. You can do a lot later yourself with contrast and colors, but it's just easier if you start out with something well done. I should actually be using DeviantArt more. I've become a little bit reliant on stock photography sites, and there's really some great stuff on DeviantArt that I haven't been looking at. I'll have to come back to it for some of the projects I'm working on. I'm doing a Jane Austen book right now. I need timepiece photography. That was a little strange. Anyway, in the next photo, I'll talk a little bit more about licensing. In the next video, I'll talk more about licensing, attribution, what you need to watch out for, what kinds of things you can use the photo for, and the rights. But in this one, these are just some of the stock photography sites and the places that I use to get pictures. I'll leave some of the links probably in the description so you can find them again.